Hello everyone, welcome to the unit of Themes in Literature. My name is Nita Novianti and I am the coordinator and lecturer for this unit. As stated in the syllabus, in this unit we will explore some universal themes in literature based on genre, time period, and cultural context. We will analyze the theme of some literary pieces by examining the literary techniques employed and drawing comparisons with other pertinent works within the same genre, time period, or context. This means that we are going to read several works with the same genre or written in the same time period or context and compare the themes of these works. We will not merely answer the questions of what are the themes of the narratives or what is the overarching theme of the narratives, but we will also attempt to address the bigger question of how do we find out the theme. This bigger question brings us to the next objective of the unit, that is to help you to closely examine a narrative to identify how the theme is developed as the narrative progresses, specifically looking at the literary techniques used, such as character and characterization, setting, symbolism, and so on. The ability to identify the ways a theme is developed will be really helpful in writing up your final assessment task. With these goals, it is important then to establish the definitions of the key concepts informing this unit, which include theme, genre, and literary techniques. So, what is theme? Theme is something that we might already be familiar with. In fact, it is one of the most common questions one gets asked after reading a story. What is the theme of the story? Generally, it is agreed that theme is the core, central, and unifying idea of a story or narrative that includes the underlying messages of the story. However, there are other terms that we might get confused with theme, such as subject or topic. Nikki Gamble's differentiation between subject and theme is helpful to understand that a theme is usually deeper than a subject. The subject of a story, sometimes equivalent to its topic, is concerned with what the story is about. For example, the novel series Harry Potter is about a wizard boy venturing into the magic world to find out about his true identity, his past or history, and his future, under the looming threat of the dark wizard Lord Voldemort. This is the subject of the novel, what the novel is all about. The subject can be said to be a condensed summary of the narrative. Therefore, we can quite easily identify the subject of a story by reading and summarizing it. Now it's your time to think about the subject of Harry Potter. You can pick any of the series, any of the novels in the series. So what do you think that particular novel in the series, or maybe the whole series in general, is all about? Pause the video and come back when you're ready. Now, when we talk about themes, we need to dig deeper into the story. That is, we need to explore its various elements in order to find out the theme of the story. Some of the possible themes of Harry Potter the series include the triumph of love, friendship, and courage over the forces of darkness and the journey of self-discovery and growth in the face of adversity. Another possible theme of the novel series is concerned with the timeless battle between good and evil, as Harry and his friends strive to overcome dark forces and uphold the values of compassion, bravery, and love. Again, if you have read or watched Harry Potter, what do you think the theme of this work is? Once again, you may pause the video to think about your answer and come back when you're ready. The next question will be, why are there possible themes? Can't there be just one theme of a story? These kinds of questions call for the idea of subjectivity of theme. Have you ever had a conversation with your friends about what you think the theme of a particular narrative is, and then found out that you had different ideas of what the theme of the work is? So, whose theme is the quote-unquote correct one? How do we justify that the theme we identify is the correct one? Is there even such a thing as a correct theme? Let's unpack these questions one by one. As mentioned before, there is not a single true theme in a narrative. Instead, there are several or perhaps countless possible themes. How so? As you might recall from your learning of reader response theory, look up Rosenblatt, 1938, the reader plays an important role in constructing the meaning of a narrative. Different readers bring unique perspectives, emotions, and experiences into their reading. For example, you and I have different backgrounds, beliefs, values, and hence perspectives in life. These differences influence how we interpret themes. As we actively engage with the text, we draw on our personal context, that is, experiences and emotions, to identify and resonate with specific themes. For example, due to my age and other socio-cultural occasions, such as being a mother of two, a lecturer, and so on, I may be more concerned about or be more drawn to the theme or to identify the theme related to coming of age or growing up, for example, in the Harry Potter series. However, you may be more interested in or maybe more drawn into uncovering the theme of friendship or the battle between evil versus good, and so on and so forth, depending on your own experiences and backgrounds. So the next question to unpack is, if we have different ideas of what a theme of a story is, whose theme is the quote-unquote correct one? And is there even such a thing as a correct theme? These questions pertain to the way we justify our identified theme. Interpreting themes involves looking at the patterns, symbols, and messages within a narrative. Our knowledge about literary elements and techniques, therefore, is necessary. Justifying a theme, then, involves providing evidence from the text to support the interpretation. This evidence could include specific events, character development, dialogue, and symbolism within that narrative that point to the identified theme. So it is important to be able to justify our identified theme based on a careful examination of these literary elements and techniques. We will delve more deeply into the examination of these elements and techniques in analyzing a theme in the next lecture. Now, let's shift back our discussion to the main topic of theme. It is important to distinguish between universal themes and the theme of a particular literary piece. Let's start with universal themes. Universal themes are overarching, timeless concepts that resonate across different cultures, eras, and human experiences. These themes explore fundamental aspects of the human condition and are not confined to any specific work of literature. They address universal truths such as love, loss, the passage of time, the quest for identity, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. These themes possess a broad and enduring relevance, allowing us as readers from diverse backgrounds to connect with and reflect upon shared human experiences. In the case of Harry Potter, for example, there are some universal themes that we can identify, including love, friendship, the quest for identity, and the struggle between good and evil. In contrast, the theme of a particular literary piece is the specific insight or message that the author conveys through the narrative. It is the central idea that the work revolves around and seeks to explore or communicate. While universal themes are broad and transcend individual stories, the theme of a literary work is shaped by the unique characters, settings, and events within that specific piece. It reflects the author's perspective on a particular issue, allowing for a more focused exploration of ideas within the context of the story being told. So, in the case of Harry Potter, we see that this series includes the universal theme of good versus evil, among others. Like I've told you before, there are multiple themes that we can explore in this particular series. But let's take one universal theme as an example, which is the battle of good versus evil. To find out the particular theme of the series is to analyze how this universal theme has been quote-unquote treated or represented or conveyed in the series. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, shapes the theme by introducing unique characters like Harry, Hermione, and Voldemort, each with their own moral complexities and struggles. The magical settings, such as Hogwarts and the Wizarding World, provide a distinct backdrop for the exploration of the universal theme. Additionally, the events that unfold, such as the Battle of Hogwarts and the sacrifices made by the characters, contribute to the nuanced treatment of the overarching theme, which is good versus evil. That's the overarching theme. So, while the universal theme of good versus evil, or the overarching theme of good versus evil, provides a foundation, it is the author's distinct perspective manifested through characters, settings, and events that gives rise to the particular theme of the Harry Potter series. And the particular theme within the Harry Potter series can be that, this is just an example, and of course you can come up with a different idea of what the particular theme of this work is that despite the formidable challenges and sacrifices, good will always triumph over evil. J.K. Rowling crafts this theme by portraying the enduring power of qualities such as courage, friendship, and love embodied by characters like Harry, Ron, and Hermione. The narrative consistently reinforces the idea that these positive forces are more potent, more powerful than the dark intentions of characters like Lord Voldemort. Through various trials and tribulations, the series illustrates that the resilience and inherent goodness in individuals ultimately lead to the defeat of evil. This particular theme serves as a moral compass, emphasizing the importance of virtuous values and overcoming adversity and prevailing against the forces of darkness. Now, let's turn our attention to other terms that will be very important in this unit, which are genre, time period, and context. To make it easier to understand, I will start the discussion with time period instead of genre. So, as we are going to explore themes of literary narratives based on their genre, time period, and context, it is important to discuss these three concepts. And once again, let's start with time period, which is probably the easiest to understand among these three concepts. While time period and context might be relatively straightforward, the genre introduces a unique layer of complexity. That's why we are going to discuss genre later. So time period refers to the historical era in which a literary work is set or created. Understanding the time period is crucial for grasping the cultural, social, and political influences that shape the narrative. The beliefs, values, and societal norms of a specific time period can significantly impact the themes explored in a literary piece. Here are some key time periods in English literature, along with notable examples. We start with Old English, circa 450 to 1066. Example of works from this era or from this time period include an epic poem, Beowulf, which showcases heroic ideals and the struggles of a Scandinavian hero. And then we move to Middle English from 1066 to 1500s. Some of the works from this era include Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. It's a must read. Try to read it if you have time. It provides a glimpse into medieval life and the social dynamics in that era. And then we have the Renaissance period with such works as, of course, William Shakespeare's Hamlet and Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet. And then we go to Restoration era from 1660 to 1700. From this era, we have John Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel, which is a satirical poem reflecting the political and social upheavals of the time, particularly the restoration of the monarchy. And then we have the 18th century time period from 1700 to 1800. Some of the works from this period include Richardson's Pamela, a very famous early novel of the 18th century. And then we have the Romanticism era from circa 1780 to 1837. You may have heard names such as William Wordsworth, Keats, Lord Byron, those romantic poets. And then Victorian era from 1837 to 1901. So this is the English literature from the Britain, from the United Kingdom. So we may find different time period when we go to other different contexts, such as, let's say, the US or even Asian contexts. So the Victorian era, some of the works that are famous from this era include Charles Dickens' Great Expectations and his other works. And then we have the Modernist era from circa 1900 to 1945 during the World Wars, the First and Second World War. I think you may be familiar with T.S. Eliot's poem The Wasteland. And then we have the Postmodernist era, circa 1945 up to present, and sometimes which is called Contemporary era. So the time where we are in is called the Contemporary period. So these are some of the examples of how periodization is done in a particular context. And like I've told you before, it may be different from one context to another, from one geographical context to another. But this is just an example. Now, let's move on to context. So, context is a bit different from time period because context encompasses a broader spectrum, which includes cultural, historical, and social context. This involves considering the author's background, the intended audience, and the circumstances surrounding the creation of the work. Analyzing context aids in understanding the motivations behind certain themes and provides insights into the author's perspective. For instance, the backdrop of racial segregation in the United States has played a vital role in shaping themes within both modern and postmodern American literature. Several notable works that delve into the complexities of this context include To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which is a classical novel set in the 1930s in the fictional town of Macomb, Alabama. It explores racial injustice and the trial of a black man, Tom Robinson, who is falsely accused of raping a white woman. We also have The Help by Catherine Stockett. This one was written in 2009. However, this is really interesting, it was set in the early 1960s in Jackson, Mississippi. So we see how time period is different from context. So a work can be written in the contemporary time era, in the contemporary period, but is set in the past, in the historical context of, let's say, the black segregation, the black and white segregation in the United States. An example of this is, once again, The Help by Catherine Stockett, which was written in 2009. This novel was set in the early 1960s in Jackson, Mississippi, and it portrays the lives of African American maids and their relationships with white families during a time of racial tension and civil rights activism. So that's context, and knowing the context surrounding the creation of a particular work is really helpful in better understanding what the theme of the story or the narrative is about. So, the concepts of context and time period lay a foundation for a comprehensive analysis of a literary work. And genre introduces a dynamic element to this. So, the genre of a literary work influences not only its thematic content, but also the narrative style, structure, and intended impact on the reader. Different genres such as romance, science fiction, or historical fiction bring forth distinct thematic elements and conventions. Conventions mean like the rules of how to write something, quote unquote. Like the convention of writing a novel will be different from the convention of writing a short story. That's categories. So the convention of writing a horror fiction will be different from the conventions of writing a romantic fiction, for example. So exploring themes within the context of a specific genre allows for a nuanced understanding of how certain ideas are portrayed, challenged, or reinforced through the use of certain conventions, or probably even the, let's say, the use of against. So, some writers can cleverly go against the norms, go against the conventions to craft their work, to convey certain messages. So broadly, literature can be divided into fiction and non-fiction. Now, due to the large scope of the discussion, we are going to focus on literary fiction, or also often referred to as literary narratives. I would like to emphasize that this is not an exhaustive list of genres, and you may be aware immediately that there are different ways genres have been conceptualized and understood. So different scholars may approach this concept differently, may define genre differently, may also categorize genres differently. Just an example, one might argue that fairy tales and folk tales are distinct genres, not belonging to fantasy, and so on. However, the diagram that I'm showing here provides some general guidance that can help us understand the various genres of literary narratives out there. So this diagram was adapted from MacDonald's work published in 2023. So literary narratives or fiction can be divided into those that belong to the realistic and fantasy works. And then we have hybrid genre, which is a combination of both of these genres, the realistic and fantasy. Realistic fiction can also be further divided into contemporary and historical fiction. So contemporary refers to today's era. So works such as To Kill a Mockingbird and The Help mentioned previously can be considered historical fiction, as they depict specific periods in the past and draw upon historical events to shape the narratives. Now, contemporary fiction reflects the present time, capturing the social, cultural, and political landscape of the current era. We may take The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, published in 2003, as an example of contemporary fiction, which explores the complexities of friendship, betrayal, and redemption in a contemporary Afghan context. Next, we have fantasy. So fantasy is a genre that is rooted in imagination and symbolism, often conveys moral lessons, cultural values, and archetypal themes that resonate across generations. So I guess that's why MacDonald includes fairy tales and folk tales under fantasy, for I think this particular reason, that they conveys moral lessons, cultural values, and archetypal themes that resonate across generations. While animal stories, fairy tales, and myths or legends may seem distinct, they all fall under the expansive umbrella of fictional narratives, offering readers a diverse array of imaginative and timeless tales. An example of animal stories will be Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. I think this is a very famous one. It's been made into a couple of films, both animation and a combination of human-like and animation. And then we have fairy tales, folk tales, myths, and legends. They all belong to the same subgenre. And these are all fantastical stories that can be found worldwide. Every culture, every country will have its own myths, legends, and fairy or folk tales. Finally, we have what we call as hybrid genre. So hybrid genres often incorporate fantastical or surreal elements into narratives that are otherwise grounded in reality. This blending creates a unique literary experience, allowing authors to explore complex themes and concepts in imaginative ways. Such hybrid works usually challenge traditional genre boundaries, offering readers a richer and more nuanced understanding of the human experience. They allow for creative exploration of reality and fantasy, making room for symbolism, allegory, and imaginative storytelling. Examples of this genre include magical realism, such as the work by Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. It's a very great novel. I read it maybe 10 years ago, kind of forget what it's all about now, but I remembered reading this work and just feeling fascinated by this work. It's an interesting genre. If you have time, please do read this one. So this novel blends magical elements with a realistic portrayal of a multi-generational family in the fictional town of Macondo. Not Macondo, it's Macondo. So magical realism involves incorporating fantastical elements into an otherwise realistic narrative. And there's also the historical fantasy of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Suzanne Clarke, published in 2004. It's your turn now. Can you think of literary narratives, either in the forms of novel or short story, that belong to any of these genres and subgenres? Just do what you have done before. You may pause the video, have a think about it, and then come back when you're ready. So in addition to literary narratives, we also have poetry and plays as part of the literary genres. These are separate categories in themselves. Similar to literary narratives, these two categories have their own genres, combining both realistic and fantasy, and can be written in various forms. Maybe you've heard of prose poetry or poetic prose and something like that. Okay, so now this is our last discussion for today, which is about thematic interpretation and criticism. As this unit is on themes in literature, as the title suggests, it is then important to understand what thematic interpretation and criticism is. Let's start with thematic interpretation. It is the process of identifying and understanding the themes present in a literary work. It involves identifying the underlying ideas, messages, or recurring concepts that contribute to the overall meaning of the text. It is often an individual reader's or critic's engagement with the text, focusing on understanding and articulating the themes they perceive. It may involve personal reflections, insights, and discussions about the themes. At its core, thematic interpretation is transactional. Earlier, we discussed transactional or reader response criticism briefly. We will further explore this concept as we move on to the next important term, which is thematic criticism. So what is thematic criticism? Mendelssohn's definition of thematic criticism is quite useful in this case. Excuse me. So, thematic criticism is a form of archaeology that excavates the layers of text and compares that text with those found in other excavations. It is almost always comparative. As such, thematic criticism can be powerful and threatening, and sometimes limited and self-limiting. Thematic criticism is not a theoretical approach to fiction in itself, but can be situated within theoretical approaches such as modernism, deconstruction, postmodernism, and structuralism. So based on this definition, thematic criticism involves analyzing and interpreting literature based on the recurring themes and patterns found within a work. So it can be in a single work or across multiple works. So you may do thematic criticism of a particular work, but like Mendelssohn has stated, more commonly, thematic criticism is done by doing comparison across works with the same universal theme. Scholars and critics employing thematic criticism focus on identifying and exploring the underlying ideas, motives, and messages that contribute to the overall meaning of a literary work or literary works. This approach aims to uncover the thematic elements that provide insight into the author's intentions, cultural context, and broader human experiences. As Mendelssohn emphasized, thematic criticism is not a theoretical approach. However, it plays a crucial role within the field of literary criticisms. It is seamlessly integrated into overarching theoretical approaches such as modernism, deconstruction, postmodernism, and structuralism. This is so because themes serve as a crucial element that ties together different components of a literary work, including characters, plot, symbols, and settings. Many literary critics, regardless of their specific approach, often engage with themes as a central aspect of their analysis. Whatever lenses we use to read and analyze a literary piece, we will seek to identify the theme of the piece first. For example, a psychoanalytic critic may emphasize the exploration of psychological themes, while a feminist critic may focus on gender-related themes. The use of different lenses may shape the way we identify the themes, but also enriches the understanding of themes in literature and allows for nuanced interpretations. In this unit, thematic interpretation and criticism is regarded as transactional, acknowledging the diverse backgrounds we as readers bring to our interpretation and criticism. However, as academics, we need to be able to justify our thematic interpretation and/or criticism. Therefore, we are going to also examine the literary elements that have contributed to our understanding of the themes of a particular piece of work. As we explore the themes of various literary narratives and poems, we will also look at the context, that is, when and where the author created the piece to enrich our understanding of the theme. We will also attempt to apply a particular lens, or at least have a degree of awareness of the theoretical lens we might use in interpreting the themes, which may include psychoanalytic lens, gender lens, feminist lens, and so on and so forth.